Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We open the second day of our conference, and we open the second day of our conference with special bonus, a panel which we were all looking forward to, and also a panel which brings together Slovak foreign minister and two foreign ministers from the Eastern Partnership countries. And this is to follow on yesterday's program, because yesterday Slovakia was a meeting place, quite an important meeting place, of Visegrad 4 plus European Union Eastern Partnership, bringing together High Representative Ashton, Commissioner Füle, but also German Foreign Minister Guido Westerwelle. So we can be proud that Slovakia played a key role in shaping important European policies. I know that meeting went well. This was a kind of a wake-up call and inspiration for a number of countries in the Eastern Partnership, to show some inspiration, but also to have a little sobering note how we go. And that sobering note is, of course, that you got a lot of friends here on our side, but you also have to be able to deliver so friends can help you. And I think that important message was here. Two ministers who are here, I think they made a very good contribution, and they led the crowd, and they can be two good success stories for the future. So it's very good to have you here. Just a little note, a keynote speech will be delivered by Minister DZURINDA. It's an easy role. He needs no introduction here. He wears a couple of hats. He's not only foreign minister, he's the chairman of a leading coalition party here. Well, he's been double prime minister, I can say, and the creator of a special story of Slovakia, which was so admired, a pillar of modernization of Slovakia, and the architect of a very sexy story of a small country going up and down the hill, but at the end being a nice, ugly duckling turned into a beautiful swan of Europe. Mr. Minister, I invite you to the floor to kick off the debate, and then we'll call on the ministers and Bruce Jackson, who will be the devil's advocate at the end. I asked him in the morning what is his mood, whether provocative or conciliatory, but he's always in a provocative mood, so looking forward, Bruce, for your comments at the end. Mr. Minister.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rastio, ladies and gentlemen, excellencies. And looking at the audience, I can say, dear friends, I am very happy being here again, because I remember the last meeting in very similar composition when we organized the summit of V4 foreign ministers and our friends from the Balkans. And yesterday and people from the Balkans are here again. I'm happy. Welcome. And yesterday it was for me emotional even more, maybe because we had many beautiful people here again, and the topic was very, very actual, especially looking at the sound of what happens in the north of Africa. There is only one thing which is not nice, that time is running so quickly, but that's life. So I would like to appreciate again and to thank the organizers of this event for the opportunity to address such an honorable audience and to share with you my thoughts on a topic so actual and so important for all of us. I have maybe two ambitions for the beginning. The first, I would like to present our Slovak priorities in the Eastern Partnership. And secondly, I wish to share with you the main achievements of our yesterday's extended Visegrad 4 ministerial meeting. It is too early to say whether we will bring the Eastern Partnership to a new level at the Warsaw summit later this year. But I want to assure you that our ambitions are very high. And I had really a feeling yesterday that maybe our meeting could be a wake-up call for our friends and for ourselves to do more to make this partnership, this composition more political and more visible. So, first of all, I want to reconfirm that the Slovak priority is to have meaningful and visible EU policy in the Eastern neighborhood through the Eastern Partnership. Our key goal is to have a stable, democratic, and prosperous neighborhood, which is very natural and understandable. Slovakia supports European aspirations of partner countries, subject to their genuine interests and readiness. Our support is based on individual approach to each partner. Everyone needs adequate incentives underpinned by suitable means. We want these countries to enjoy European stability and prosperity together with us. The EU has much to offer, but this is a challenge also for our Eastern partners. We need to see fast and credible effort and deep reforms on their side. So the process or the relation is biconditional. Turbulent events of these days in the countries of our southern neighborhood attract major part of our attention, and rightly so. However, consider it important to maintain balance between the two neighborhood policy dimensions, South and East. There is one lesson to be learned from the developments in the southern neighborhood, which is fully valid also for the Eastern Partnership. Notably, that all people want freedom, democracy, and life in dignity. The examples of Libya, Egypt, and Tunisia show that every dictatorship has its end. We know it also because of our own experience in Slovakia, or in the Czech Republic, or in the other new democracies. Only such regimes have perspective that respect human rights and pluralism in the society, and free market, competition, and private ownership in the economy. On the contrary, blocked or delayed democratic reforms lead to social frustration. And social frustration can lead to the revolution. Commitment to fundamental European values and principles is the keystone for the Eastern Partnership. We have learned from our own experience how difficult it is to establish a genuine democracy, and I am not sure that the process has already been done. We know the price of democracy and its irreplaceable role in the transformation of our society. Therefore, we closely follow the situation in Belarus and demand to stop political repression and harassment of the opposition, independent media, and civil society, and to release all political prisoners. We call to release all people detained in Belarus on the political ground. The position is more than clear. We are convinced that totalitarian regimes have no future in our continent. During the last 2 days, I had a chance to talk to the representatives of the Belarusian opposition as well as to the representative of the Belarusian Foreign Ministry. At these meetings, I delivered several clear messages. The crackdown of the 19th of December demonstration and the persecution that followed are completely unacceptable. We are not going to discuss with Lukashenko any other issues before the political prisoners are released and the persecution ends. The European Union must show firmness and speak with one voice. We have to prove our commitment to human rights. We have to clearly manifest that the EU is based on values. And I told to Deputy Minister Voronetsky very, very clearly that we understand what happens in Belarus, because we remember the regime before 1989. I told to him that I was 34 years old, and I remember very well. And I told to Voronetsky also that I remember the second half of 90s, when some politicians in my home tried to go back and to establish new totality in Slovakia. So our experience comes not from a book, but from our own life, which is, of course, remembered in our heads. So, ladies and gentlemen, there is a strong symbolism that 20 years ago, the Visegrad 4 countries decided to join forces in their efforts to integrate into the European and transatlantic community. Today, we are joining our efforts in promoting our European values farther to the east. The added value of the Visegrad 4 in the Eastern Partnership is, as I have already said, our unique transformation experience. Our countries underwent the whole process of transformation and made deep, very deep and painful structural reforms. Our countries established a precedent worth following. We provide an example of successful enlargement, a tangible success of European ideas and values. Nowadays, the EU particularly needs this kind of positive examples that make our values more attractive for countries with similar history and geopolitics. To provide practical examples of our Slovak contribution to these efforts, let me mention two practical projects that we launched for our Eastern partners last year. The first, in 2010, we launched a National Convention for European Integration in Moldova and in Ukraine. Projects similar to the one implemented in Slovakia during its EU accession process. Pavel Hamzik remembers very well. The project is designed to develop the strategies and mechanisms of communication with civil society, with all parts of society. Its goal is to better inform the population about the reforms promoted by the government, but also to create the space for free debate, running government, opposition, church, youth organizations, civic society. And the second, recently the Slovak Ministry of Foreign Affairs established the Center of Transfer of the Slovak Experiences from the accession process. I remember that we have already had some people from Serbia in this center for sharing experience. The role of the center is to provide timely and tailor-made response to the needs of our partners through consultations, expert assistance, or internships. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, we entered 2011 with the task to review the European neighborhood policy and strengthen the Eastern Partnership. In April, the European Commission will announce a communication of the review of the European neighborhood policy. We expect it to confirm greater differentiation between the partners and the streamlining and unification of political and financial assistance instruments. I am glad that for a few days, Bratislava has been, I would say, temporary capital of the Eastern Partnership. Yesterday's Visegrad 4 ministerial meeting with all Eastern partners together with our German colleague, German friend, Foreign Minister Guido Westerwelle, together with Lady Ashton, the first Vice President of the Commission and High Representative for Foreign Policy Issues and Security, together with Stefan Füle, Commissioner for Enlargement. We all underlined the importance of the Eastern Partnership in the European foreign policy. As you know, a joint statement was adopted on the Eastern Partnership, which outlined our vision for the Eastern Partnership. I would like to emphasize several important elements out of it. Above all, we agreed on, I will mention only 7 short points. Keeping the Eastern Partnership high up the EU agenda and making it more dynamic, more effective, and more visible. Second, provide support for the most advanced partners implementing the EU acquis. You know this, to promote more for more principle of differentiation. Deepening of the EU political relations and political dialogue with the Eastern partners. Acknowledgement of the partners' aspirations towards European integration. Substantial thing, and I can tell you that it was not easy to establish this together with our German colleague or the others. But the sentence is very, very clear. Acknowledgement of the partners' aspirations towards European aspirations. Integration. 5, ensuring adequate financing of EU policy towards the Eastern partners in the next financial perspective. 6, liberalization and facilitation of the EU visa policy for enhancing mobility and people-to-people contacts. And last but not least, enhancement of the activity and visibility of the Visegrad Group within the Eastern Partnership, including by the International Visegrad Fund. I am going to send a letter to the president of the fund, what was done and what should be or could be done, what we are able to do, being more effective, more attractive for our Eastern partners. With our V4 partners, we expressed our intention to do their utmost in this regard during the Visegrad year of 2011, when, as already, all you know, Hungary and Poland hold the EU presidency. There is a strong and unanimous interest in our countries in maintaining the current momentum to the benefit of our friends. We are convinced that the next Eastern Partnership Summit during the Polish EU presidency later this year will bring a new impetus and revive the East European vector of the European neighborhood policy. So, dear colleagues, Gregory, Yuri, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, I would like to use the opportunity of having here 2 panelists, my colleagues and friends, the foreign ministers of Moldova and Georgia, Yuri Lanka and Gregory VASHADZE. I am very happy that Bill Jackson is with us. I believe that he will be provocative, but not towards me. Because we are all friends, remember, please, this reality. I am very happy to welcome the determination of my friends, my partners from the East, pro-European governments, determination of their pro-European governments. Thanks to the gradual implementation of reforms, European norms and values, your countries will be able to modernize institutions, improve legal and economic environment, increase competitiveness, and attract investment. All of it for the benefit and prosperity of your people. I was in Moldova in November, and I was deeply impressed by the effort and strong will, not only politicians, but also people to move and to go on that track. You can turn your countries into very success stories. And I hope that you will motivate other partners in intensifying their efforts within the Eastern Partnership. At the same time, I cannot stress enough the fact that the only one who holds the key of your European perspective, and maybe this is not good news, but you know it, is you alone. No matter how difficult it may become, consider the transformation process as an opportunity for the sake of your own country. The key to success is to understand that the process is just as important as its final goal. Take as much as you can out of it. Keeping this in mind, soon you will find yourself on track, and you can become another success story, I am sure. But until then, there is still a long way to walk. On this journey, you can count on our strong, very strong encouragement and support. Thank you very much for your attention.
Mr. Minister, thank you very much for your for kicking off this discussion and this panel with your remarks. And I would like to invite the second speaker to address the panel, Foreign Minister and Deputy Prime Minister of the Republic of Moldova, IURIE LEANCÂ. The Moldova has been a very good story so far. The government being recreated or pulled together again with an ambitious reform agenda. So we are very hopeful for Moldova to show the right example and to be really supplying all of its friends with good news, so we really can be the advocates of your progress. Mr. Minister, the floor is yours. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be back to the Globsec conference, an event which has become already an excellent venue for brainstorming, but I'm sure discussions which will have some impact on the policy-making process as well. We are here together with my colleagues for the Globsec conference, but also for the V4 Plus ministerial, and I would like to thank Minister DZURINDA for inviting us here and for having very interesting, sometimes even emotional discussions about the developments in the Eastern Partnership region. It just shows that it's the right moment to look at the past 2 years, but also to see what are the shortcomings of the Eastern Partnership as an idea, as a project, what are the areas which we need to consolidate, and what kind of vision we need to establish to make the Eastern Partnership and each country which is a member of this Eastern Partnership initiative a successful or a success story. I also would like to thank you very much, Minister, for showing this interest for the region. That's exactly an attitude which we need, and we appreciate it very much, because if we were able to achieve anything last year, after the first arrival to power of the pro-democracy forces, it was possible just due to an excellent interaction and cooperation with the EU countries, and especially those countries which have a much better interest and understanding of the developments in the region. It was also very interesting to discuss about the lessons from the Visegrad countries' transformation process. And I think that one lesson which we could really learn and conclusions draw is that the geographical proximity is not enough. More than geographical proximity is important to share the same values and to implement the same values. That's why Visegrad has become such a successful project, and that's what exactly I think we need to learn more in the countries which belong to the Eastern Partnership. Now, if you allow me to briefly outline the successes of the Eastern Partnership, but also to focus a bit on what are the shortcomings and what we think we should do in order to increase the effectiveness of this organization. On the success, I think that the most important and most visible positive part of it is, of course, the bilateral track. And those countries which want to benefit fully from the openings, from the new frameworks which was established by the Eastern Partnership have done it. And I think that Moldova's case is a very relevant one. We came to some extent with a delay compared to our other partners because of the previous communist government was very reluctant to be engaged in the Eastern Partnership. But after a delayed start, I think that we proved that if you have the ambition, if you have the political will, if you have the capacities, and if you have these unprecedented openings from the EU, then you can move very quickly. And the way we advanced on the negotiations of the association agreement, the way we advanced with the visa dialogue, which has been started only last June, and today we have already the action plan. We have the plan of implementation of the action plan. So I think that the dynamics is very positive. The so-called deep and comprehensive free trade area, I think, is another relevant example if the country mobilizes, understanding that it's in first place for its own interest, then it can successfully advance. And I hope that in May the Commission will get the mandate of the EU member states so that we could May, June, begin officially the negotiations on the free trade area. Again, it's just another very relevant example. Let me also mention another great idea which was embodied in the Eastern Partnership, which is the institutional capacity building. I think it's one of the most important initiatives launched within the Eastern Partnership, which addresses the weaknesses of the institutions in our countries. Your countries, the Central European countries, have shown very clearly that if you don't address this issue of consolidating the institutions, the capacities, the entire process, reform process, will be stalled and will be not as successful. So even from this point of view, I think that we have advanced pretty well. Now let me move to the shortcomings and to the problems. Of course, I think that the multilateral track is still missing its effectiveness. And why it's not as successful as the bilateral track, probably there are some objective but also subjective reasons to it. One is probably because the platforms which were envisaged between the multilateral track were quite static. The often mentioned issue of funding probably has also played a certain role. There are not enough financial resources to support several very good ideas which were reflected in these platforms. And of course, we feel that not all the important stakeholders were involved in this process. We partially were successful in attracting such important institutions, financial institutions like EBRD, European Investment Bank, and we see already some concrete progress. But probably we should have paid more attention to involving the business community, which is a legitimate stakeholder. That's why I think that once we will hold together the EAP summit in Poland in October of this year, eventually we should think about holding a business meeting and where to discuss especially the private-public partnership ideas, which I'm sure would contribute to with a great extent to the success of the platforms and making the multilateral cooperation much more effective. In some areas in which we feel that we have a particular interest, like for instance the justice and home affairs or the integrated border management, we took the initiative, we took the leadership, and we have tried to coordinate the efforts on the regional base. A very successful pan-European conference was held last month in Chisinau, together with the European Commission in the presence of the Commissioner for Home Affairs, Madam Malmström, on the so-called Stockholm process. And I think that we will continue, I'm confident we will continue to focus on the areas which are of primary interest for us. And of course, I cannot mention, I cannot ignore here the issue of the future of the Eastern Partnership. That's the subject which was discussed yesterday, both in the lunch as well as before the lunch. That's an issue, of course, which is a primary interest for us, because we think that among the many merits and advantages the Eastern Partnership has as an initiative, the only one thing which it lacks is detrimental a bit to its effectiveness, and of course it lacks a clear vision what's the future of Eastern Partnership, and especially what's the future of the relations between the member states of the EU, or the EU as such, and the partner countries. Again, because we speak about the experience of Visegrad countries, I think that one of the lessons is that the prospects of joining European Union and NATO was one of the strongest motivation for the elites, for the civil society, for other institutions to reform itself, to engage into this extremely important transformation process, and that's why it also was successful. And we take the assumption that if it was successful and functioned and worked in the case of your countries, of course it should work in our countries. I understand that there is a certain fatigue in many countries. I understand that the EU has to cope with many internal problems and also external challenges like the ones which now unfold in Northern Africa. But again, no one probably would question the Europeanness of Moldova, for instance, or of Georgia. And if we are able to advance with the reforms, if we embrace the same values, the same standards, I think that it would be legitimate for us, of course, to speak about clear European perspectives. What we have achieved so far is to have in the preamble of the association agreement which we discuss right now, to put in brackets the European perspectives of Moldova. And I hope very much that together with your help, MIKULÁŠ, and the help and support of other friends and those who have a clear understanding and vision of how the region should develop, we will be able gradually, I don't know when, this year or next year, to raise those brackets and to clearly indicate the European perspectives of Moldova, which again will play as a very important incentive and will contribute greatly to the successful transformation of Moldova. I would stop here and we'll be ready then to answer the questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister, for your remarks. I'll pass the floor on to His Excellency Grigol VASHADZE, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Georgia. Mr. Minister, you represent the country which is in a tough spot of the region, which is in a politically very seismic region, but also in the country which has been trying very hard to come as close to Europe as possible, on which we all keep very much fingers crossed, and you got a lot of friends on our side. So it's nice to have you here, and I'm looking forward to hear your comments and remarks.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank all of you for generous hospitality extended to us. It's a privilege and honor to be in Bratislava as MIKULÁŠ's guest. And I should say that yesterday's meeting was one of the most interesting within the framework of the Eastern Partnership, at least for me, since I have been a minister. And a lot of thanks go to you, MIKULÁŠ, because I don't know if this is becoming a wake-up call, but it's definitely it was definitely very interesting and open and candid discussion. I said yesterday, I would like to repeat today, that Visegrad's experience is tremendously important for us. All countries of the Eastern Partnership, and particularly of our region, shall understand that we all are in the same boat, and either we sail to the safe shores, and for Georgia it's definitely two strategic goals, European and Euro-Atlantic integration, or we are going to sink together. And hopes that you can be a prosperous country in a volatile region are quite childish, I should say. We've been trying very hard. You're absolutely right. We've been trying very hard. We withstand the Russian military aggression, which started not in August of 2008, but in 1991. And despite all the problems, we have quite significant achievements. Let me stress that Georgia is definitely ahead of many countries when it comes to anti-corruption measures, when it comes to independence of the judiciary system, mass media, reforms of law enforcing agencies, custom agencies, border safety, and constitutional reform, which, by the way, is wholeheartedly supported by parliamentary and non-parliamentary opposition, and which brings us much closer to the European model than we used to have before. Eastern Partnership is a wonderful instrument. It's like a Steinway, but we have to learn to play that instrument. So far, we've been limiting ourselves with seminars, with discussions, etc. I would like to see this instrument being much more practical and precise. I would like to see us going to specific projects. And being that bilateral or multilateral doesn't matter. If sometimes it's impossible to have trilateral project within the, or bilateral project, let's go on so far cooperating with individual countries. I'm sure that multilateral projects will add themselves too. I can't be happier with our cooperation with the European Union. Quite frankly, we have a historical achievement. When you go through the legal basis we're creating together with the European Union, and since January of 2009, we signed and put into full force visa facilitation and readmission agreements. Mobility partnership has been there since February of 2010. Common aviation space is signed and is temporarily, provisionally in force, waiting for ratification of all member states. Mutual protection of geographical indications will be signed quite very soon. It's initialed. And association agreement negotiations are going quite well. The only thing which is pending is opening of the free trade agreement talks, and I sincerely hope that they will be open somewhere close to summer. What is not necessary, definitely, is to explain to Georgian political class or to our citizens that everything is in our hands. You're absolutely right. We have to have those reforms, and not because we want or we shall please Brussels or any other capital, but those reforms are going to stay with our society. Democracy, civil society, open and liberal economy. All these cornerstones are something without which Georgia, at least, is not governable. Our country cannot be governed without democracy. And any sovereign democracy, any specific democracy, any democracy with national accent, all these inventions of the 90s are doomed to fail, as we are seeing all over the world today. And to stress one more important thing is that I would not agree with Yuri's notion that geographical proximity is not important. Unfortunately, it's quite important, Yuri. Because when you are bordering with Austria, with Hungary, and with Czech Republic, I would rather choose, that geographical proximity than having a neighbor which we are having from the north. This small country I'm representing, have an honor and privilege to represent. It has a lot of leverages. Very talented, highly educated population. Determination to return where we belong, to European family. Reforms. And by Georgians have been very patient since 1991. I mean, we made all the mistakes possible, but we've been very patient, I should say. And the problem which we are having is a security. I mean, yes, you shall have democratic reforms and economic success, and we are having both. But you cannot guarantee anything if you don't have security guarantees. And when you are in close vicinity of Russia, I don't know what kind of security guarantees are enough to make you sleep well. In 2008, that country tried to tarnish our dream. But what was Georgia's achievement is that our state institutions, so painfully being created since 2003, actually did withstand that aggression. And this is very important. It's one more proof that democracy, soft power, sometimes is much stronger than anything else. One more important thing I would like to stress here. I am very disappointed, extremely disappointed, that nobody neither predicted nor proposed any kind of recipe to solve those problems we are facing in the Middle East and north of Africa. We shall all admit and be quite frank about this. This is a tremendous failure of the international community. We are not prepared for crisis. We are neither prepared to predict the crisis nor prepared to resolve that crisis. International mechanisms, ladies and gentlemen, are not working. And we are living in a very, very difficult times when the international law is basically abandoned, put aside, and when international mechanisms are not working. European Union thereby shall play more vital and more important role, because the European Union, as it was demonstrated in August of 2008, has ability to agree upon resolution of some crisis and to dispatch the team to try and to solve this crisis. So please, let's pay attention not only to Northern Africa, which is a focal point now, but also to those places where the crisis yet might appear. Thank you. I think I'll stop here and then.
Thank you, Mr. Minister, for your very nice remarks on mistakes. I just would remind that when you look in the biography of saints, almost all of them did a very serious mistake during the life, but it's your determination which ends in the right way. Bruce, I don't know how to introduce you, you know, because you've been with us since the beginning, and as a compliment, what he told me as coming here on the first night, and we're having a beer together, he said, you know, I started to come here when you got 2 Skoda cars and 1 horse. And that horse was here to pull the second car. But look how it changed. And this is a Jackson's compliment on the progress, which is tremendous. And nobody in the room, and I think nobody around, can challenge Bruce's determination for promotion of democracy and modernization in behind what used to be behind the Iron Curtain or behind the wall. And we all love you for that. There are days when you hate him, when you want to kill him. There are evenings you say, you know, you got good luck I didn't have gun with me, because you would be already a dead man. Because if we introduce a unit of bluntness, it would be called 1 Jackson, and an average man would have 1 Millie Jackson. And but the thing is that you wake up in the morning and you say, he was right. And at the end you find that you love him. So I'll introduce 1 Jackson to you, and we will see who will dare. Nobody will be more than 10 Millie Jacksons here in the room.
I'm not sure thank you is in order for that, but I want the record to show that Radislav has broken Trump so we can all play the cards as we see them. And I want to compliment the organizers who basically have invited Belarusian freedom fighters, Georgian and Moldovan freedom fighters here, and parked a Rolls Royce in the driveway. I compliment you on either your keen sense of irony, extremely bad taste, or we're all going to hell. Those are, I think, our options. I mean, I think Minister DZURINDA basically pointed us in the right direction by suggesting that it's appropriate that we have this conference here, because essentially the Eastern Partnership began in Prague and now it finds itself, as all things do, in Bratislava. It is not exceptional that the Moldovan foreign minister, the Georgian foreign minister here. It's actually exceptional that we are here. If we look back on the last 10 years, the miracle of Slovakia was essentially your administration, sir. But we have to remember, it was sandwiched between a crypto-fascist under Mečiar and a left populist under Fico. And frankly, at no time in any transition did you have more than 15% of the vote. So it's absolutely magical and rare that we are actually having a conference on democracy in the Kempinski by the Danube with a Rolls Royce in the driveway. I mean, the odds of that would have been 1,000 to 1 if you'd be basically calculating. And I just interject that because I think that there has to be a sense of modesty and humility when we look at what Chisinau and Tbilisi and hopefully someday Minsk are attempting to do. There's nothing Hegelian and inevitable about pulling this off. The chances are long against us historically and in temporal time. So when we start looking at things like the Eastern Partnership and attempts to go further east and build a Europe whole and free, this is something that generations have worked upon. And so there has to be a modesty as we begin this in the sense that this is a beginning of a new round. Hopefully the defeat we suffered at Bucharest has now been reversed and we are looking again at our challenges. The second thing I'd kind of like to correct is there's a tendency both in America and I think in Europe to think everything what we do is charity. We do it because we're nice people. Nonsense. We're not doing the Eastern Partnership or these kinds of things because we have any affection. We're doing it because we have to. It's an absolute necessity. It's an existential requirement. Politicians don't do things because they're nice guys. They do it because the alternative is disaster. And I think I thought we gave a little bit short shrift to the article of Ivan Krestov and Mark Leonard yesterday. They were trying to describe the contours of our history. I would submit for you this is as close as you're going to find in your generation to a George Kennan. So if you've only read it twice, keep reading it again. They basically describe a Europe where there are things that haven't been successfully multilateralized. Turkey is not within the system. Ukraine is not within the system. Russia is not within the system. And all in their semantics, whether it's Davutoglu or Putin's, sovereign democracy or the Ukrainian non-bloc, they're all defining themselves in European terms. I submit for your consideration, 250 million people, which is essentially 1/3 of all of Europe, are not within your system. Their armies combined are larger than all of your armies combined in Western Europe. They have more military power, and they control virtually 100% of the overland routes of your energy to you. You cannot afford to lose them. And so basically the entire point is, even though Europe may not be prepared to take them in today, the whole idea of association is don't let them drift further away, because it is basically the end of the Euro-Atlantic Alliance. It's the end of our ordinating power in global politics. That is essentially why the Eastern Partnership was created. And basically, I think it's interesting because I don't think Stefan Füle actually fully understands why he is executing these policies. The enlargement policy was an attempt to keep Turkey within the European system, to give us an ability to work in the Middle East and in North Africa. The partnership policy was basically an attempt to tie these important countries, European countries in the South Caucasus, closer to Europe. And frankly, the reset policy was an attempt to hold Russia within a European discussion. That's why we're doing it. And so there have been changes, since we first began this. It used to be that the hard power of NATO and America was able to do certain things. It had influences. That crashed and burned on 2 occasions. One was at Bucharest, where we couldn't carry the day, and secondly, in the Georgian War. For all of our power, we could not prevent a war, which we'd actually successfully done since 1945. There wasn't a war other than in the far periphery. But this was a war within Europe, and we could not stop it. And that basically suggested that we have to go beyond the way we think in these Cold War terms and start thinking in new terms. So what the Eastern Partnership is a claim that the soft powers of Europe can be organized certainly in a coherent way to basically shape a post-Soviet space that we could otherwise not control. That's the claim. There's a counterclaim, which I think was identified as maybe the Élysée, maybe the southern states. In fact, it's a waste of resources. These are scarce resources that should not be directed east, that they would be better directed to Tunisia or a Mediterranean Union or the bailout of Greece or Portugal. Those are, that is the tension in our debate. Obviously, I'm firmly on the first side that the historic challenges to Europe have always come, from the east. Europe fails from its east. It doesn't fail from the west. You never get invaded by Greenland or something. Actually, even America doesn't invade you. We usually show up after the war's been on for 2 years. The great dangers, Russia and the West, the instability in Central Europe, and the confusion of Ukraine, and the problem of the Ottoman Empire and South. Those are the three great problems of Europe, and have always been so. And the claim essentially was that a completed Europe, fully whole and free, that is inclusive in Chisinau and inclusive with Tbilisi, would have to solve those problems. And what I think Krestov and Leonard were doing was giving you one suggestion. European history is about multilateralizing power. That's what Europe does. There was one debate in 2003 where basically power had to be multilateralized. It had to go to the UN. But basically, the threatening power was actually America. Bill Le Pen and Schroeder needed it. But now the debate is changed. The things that are acting polar are Russia. They're acting without restraint. Turkey is not connected, and countries that are in the East are searching for a connection. I think Krestov and Leonard proposed a trialogue in order to basically start the process of multilateralizing the forgotten East. I think Grigori and Demiria was correct to say trialogues don't necessarily create multilateralism. And frankly, a more appropriate response is the Eastern Partnership, the enlargement portfolio, and the standard mechanisms of the Commission. And I think that will out. I think the reason that Phil Gordon is now basically paying homage to the European leadership is because there's a recognition in the United States is our security depends upon the success of the experiment in Brussels. And it's no longer that we can lead from the front. We basically have to be a loyal partner supporting the political experiment that is Europe. So I think we need to look again at how significant, there's always, you should be better, you should do your homework. And no, we need to basically, this panel was titled 2.0. We need to reinforce Stefan Füle. We need to give them more resources. We need to organize better. And we need to understand that this is urgent for our future, certainly in America. I mean, basically, we stop here, if we stop in Bratislava, or at the Vistula, or at the Bosphorus, you'll have a Europe that can only depend on the elegance of its diplomacy and the durability of its tourism industry. That's all you got. And inevitably, the United States will then actually have to cut Pacific deals. We will have to basically make our own decisions. The only way as Lampedusa said, if we want things to remain as they are, then things have to change. That's the argument. And essentially, I think the European leaders, Karl Bildt, Slovakia, Prague, Vilnius, that came up with the idea of this portfolio to address the East is probably, could well be the most important thing that's been done in the West since the Marshall Plan.
Thank you, Bruce, very much. I think this was a very interesting beginning, and I still think we have about 20 minutes for a round of questions. So I see the hand over here, the second over here, and the third, Tomáš Balášek. Please, can we get microphone to begin here? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Grigori Nemiria, former Deputy Prime Minister and currently Foreign Policy Advisor to Yulia Tymoshenko. I'm very pleased to be present in this panel and the whole conference for a number of reasons. But I would like to share very briefly with a few observations. First of all, I would like to express kind of sadness that there is no Ukrainian official representative, neither yesterday nor today, which is pity. to put it mildly. Secondly, that was the first panel yesterday was about Visegrad 4 and kind of the success story of Visegrad 4. Therefore, I would like to imply this to the region where I am from, as well as IURIE, as well as GRIGOL, Eastern Europe, or former post-Soviet space simultaneously. There were a number of attempts to create a framework to produce the same synergies and success stories as Visegrad produced for your countries. One, a little bit later, was Guam example, where Georgia, Ukraine, Azerbaijan, and Moldova created a kind of network, a framework with the idea to push and to achieve these synergies, to achieve the goals, despite of clearly understanding that this region much more heterogeneous from the very beginning, despite of the Soviet legacy, than the Visegrad 4. Second attempt, now we are talking about the second attempt, is Eastern Partnership. With the same idea, 6 countries, bordering, 3 of them are immediate neighbors of the European Union, and 3 in the Southern Caucasus, to try to achieve this through increased regional cooperation, through attempts to be constructive in solving frozen conflicts, to achieve this synergy. Where we are now, what we have, and there was a praise for differentiation, both yesterday with Commissioner Füle, and it's not so much differentiation, and I believe some observers already mentioned, South versus East, or East versus South. What we are talking today, and I would like to highlight this, what is more needed, a differentiation as far as the East is concerned. Here, maybe I'm mistaken, but what I heard, Foreign Minister DZURINDA was talking about differentiation and fully support. Foreign Minister of Georgia said, we are on the same boat, countries in the region. Why they move forward together or we think together? I have a problem with this vision, because it means you apply a lowest common denominator for the whole Eastern partners. That includes also Armenia and Azerbaijan and Belarus, we just heard. So if we are serious about differentiation, we have to accept the fact and to put forward that there is increasing differentiation, with some, of course, setbacks in Ukraine, which is pity, which makes Ukraine more similar to some countries in the arrearguard, not in the avant-garde, but still differentiation. You already described how quickly, if there is a political will and consensus built, country could achieve results, like Moldova in the course of last couple of years. So this is something I want you to elaborate, whether you would accept this as something that needs to be addressed seriously, and that relevant instruments be diversified, and further political perspectives could be more divergent. Second point, which I noticed, Slovak Foreign Minister mentioned Belarus, and actually he started with this point, which is very important, rightly point to make, because it would be a great mistake to neglect or to pretend that nothing happening there. There is a serious developments there that would have an impact, unfortunately, on the whole region. And not just the region of the Eastern partners, but also the immediate EU neighbors. And I also noticed that neither Moldovan foreign minister nor Georgian foreign minister mentioned Belarus by name. It is true, and I fully support a Georgian colleague point of view, there is a democracy and there is a values, and there is no such thing that could hide behind sovereign democracy or unique democracy or something very specific democracy of separate colors. But as far as that was an ambition also of Eastern neighborhood policy to create well-governed, democratic, peaceful, prosperous states, so I wonder whether your respective countries have a position, and if this, what this position, as far as the most recent developments in Belarus. Because unfortunately, new government in Ukraine closed these eyes, and when it was a meeting of the prime ministers here in Bratislava, Ukrainian Prime Minister refused to sign a joint declaration of the heads of the governments of the Visegrad and also Germany and Austria on Belarus. And a very specific question to Yuri. Whether
Actually, how many questions do you have?
a very specific question to Yuri, Transnistria. Because we discussed this yesterday, and I wonder whether you see any prospects in the near future for a renewal of the process, and if yes, where your hopes lie. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Microphone here in the middle, please, and then Tomáš Valašek at the wing.
My name is Jaap de Zwaan.
And please keep your comments and questions short because we have limited time, please.
I have two short questions. Jaap de Zwaan, Klingendaal Institute in the Netherlands. I was very pleased hearing all these presentations. They sound very optimistic and they are very positive. And attending as an observer from one of the member states in Western Europe, I nevertheless have the impression that while talking about Eastern Partnership, it seems to me that I get the impression, at least from today's and yesterday's discussion, it's more or less an invention of Visegrad, whereas, of course, it fits into the overall EU context. So my question, and perhaps I can address it to Mr. DZURINDA, do you consider Visegrad has a special responsibility to work on this project, in comparison, of course, with the overall objective, which is shared by all the member states of the EU? And my second point concerns relationship with Russia. With the exception of the Georgian minister for obvious reasons, I didn't hear any reference to a special relationship with Russia. From our research, again, from a member state in the western part of Europe, follows that, in fact, without working seriously on a constructive relation with the Russian Federation, also Eastern Partnership cannot be fully a success. So we are of the opinion that we have also, in parallel, obviously, what we are doing now, working on capacity building, institutional building, in a bilateral manner or multilateral. We also should not lose sight of this overall, this extra objective, which is working on a relationship with Russia. And I was wondering how the individual ministers are thinking about that.
Thank you. Tomáš.
Thank you, Rastya. Tomáš Valašek with the Center for European Reform in London. I had two questions, but I'm dropping one, Rastya. You'll be happy to know in the interest of time.
Thank you.
It bears pointing out, as Rihori did, that the two Eastern partners on the panel are the success stories. Georgia is the #1 reform in the world. Moldova's democratic alliance has made incredible progress in the short time it's been in power. The EU's problem is not with Moldova, not with Georgia. It's with Ukraine, with Belarus, and with the other 4 states where democratic reforms have either stalled or are in full reverse. Are you confident that the new EMP package that's being prepared in Brussels, with more money for more reforms, with more emphasis on mobility, is going to be enough to restart what Bruce Jackson called the association process, making sure that the 4 countries that are out are returning back on path towards association with the EU? Were there other things that should have been in a package that we couldn't deliver because there was no agreement on them among the level on 27? And are you confident that we'll be able to deliver even the package that we will be agreeing on in the next few weeks because of the new emphasis now and the calls to shift money from the east to the south?
All right. I think we'll take those 3 questions and we will see how much time they will remain for 1 or 2 additional. Mr. Minister.
Very briefly. Firstly, I am very happy to see my old friend in Bratislava. And yes, I mean that the regional cooperation is very, very important. When I met with our friends in November coming from the Balkans, I told to them that I recognize that there is a small town named Visegrad as well in Bosnia and Herzegovina, if I am right. And I told to them that it would be nice and productive to organize maybe not Visegrad B, but Balkan Visegrad cooperation. Because when I'm thinking, what does it mean, V4 cooperation, whether is it about infrastructure or new gas interconnectors, which are needed, of course, from the north to the south. But my deepest impression is that regional cooperation is about dialogue. there are some difficulties or some misunderstandings also inside of V4. Not everything is smooth in relations with our neighbors, which is very natural also in our homes, in our towns and villages, on our streets. But what is substantial is that there is a platform which unites us, which helps to change the view. And this is very, very important. So I noticed that you are following this type of thinking, and this is very, very good. You have a lot of common. There are many differences between the development of Georgia, in Moldova, in Ukraine, but you have a common goal, a common aspirations, I believe common future, and there are many other reasons why it would be good to establish a kind of regional cooperation which can bring, as you mentioned, a lot of synergies. Second remark, yes, I am not happy because of latest development in Ukraine. Shortly speaking, there is a good guy, there is a bad guy. Moldova, Belarus. Ukraine in between, but my expectations have been much higher. And we should think how to be influential and what should be done to bring new momentum in our neighboring country. Differentiation, yes, this is important, and my own experience say that it helps. You remember that we started our negotiations for NATO and EU later than the Czech Republic, Hungary, and Poland. And thanks to the principle of regatta, do you remember regatta principle? It was possible to run faster, to catch up with our neighbors. So you have a common goal, but your responsibility is individual. So I believe in principle of differentiation. Yes, sir, I believe that there is a special role of V4, especially towards the Balkans and towards the East. We are obliged to understand everything, what happens in Libya, what happens in Tunisia, what happens in Pakistan, but we should understand better our neighbors. And this is why this business is substantial for Sikorsky, for Martoni, for me, and for Schwarzenberg. Yes, we are determined, and we want to be as influential as possible. I told to Kati yesterday, if you need some recommendation what should be done in Islamabad or in, I don't know, in Delhi, I am not maybe the right person. But if you need an information how to speak with our friends in Belgrade or in Chisinau or in Kiev, you can call me. So my response is very simple. I feel strongly determined, especially to the south and to the east. The question of package is quite difficult for me because Miklos is shouting at me every second day that he wants to take money, not to give money. And I start to be nervous when I listen the question dealing with money. Yes, I think that the package is available and this is enough for the moment. And let's go many reforms. Let's organize the progress, and then you can ask for money. I was so happy reading the letter of Guido Westerwelle, the middle of February, how to manage our things towards southern neighborhood. Because everybody, if something happens, and Grigol is right that if something happens, we are surprised or shocked, and we start to speak with money. Not good. The process should be I forgot this right expression, biconditional. We should offer something, our experience, our intellectual capacity, but we should ask as well something. So don't forget this good principle.
Thank you very much.
I'll try to be very short in my answers. First, on differentiation. Grigori, of course, you are very right that, first of all, the Eastern Partnership region is a very heterogeneous one. Surprisingly, maybe so, but in terms of size, in terms of development of political institutions, even in terms of agenda, foreign policy agenda, some countries like Moldova, Georgia, Ukraine, they have official policy of desiring to join the EU. The other countries don't have even this approach. So, of course, differentiation should be a principle, a basic principle within the Eastern Partnership, because first it offers to the countries to take as much as they want, but of course the response should be the same from the EU. So we applaud this principle, the more for more, of course, as well. And I think that if we will exactly apply this principle, then these discussions which were held here yesterday on the redistribution of financial resources from the east to the south, or vice versa, will prove to be quite not relevant ones. And when I spoke about geographical proximity, I didn't refer to where are we placed by God and by nature. I referred to the fact that Visegrad was much stronger because they share the same values. So it was not key that Slovak Republic is next to Czech Republic, but they would join. They were a real community of the same interests, of the same approaches, and of the same values, and that made you a very successful, not just as an individual country, but as a group. And here it comes to also the question of values and question of Belarus. I was just on Tuesday in Geneva, because Moldova is a member of the Council on Human Rights, and it was a good also opportunity for me to look a bit back what was Moldova's record on taking attitude on the developments in Belarus. And I was surprised to see that my country have shown a quite principled attitude, supporting the EU positions within the OSCE, within the Council of Human Rights. Of course, it's a bit more nuanced than the position taken by Slovakia, for instance, because if you look at the foreign trade and you know how dependable we are still on certain realities on the ground, so we have to be a bit more nuanced, and that's what is often seen in the way we express and we take positions. But as a matter of principle, especially because we were in opposition to an authoritarian regime until 2009, we know how important it is to receive a proper, adequate response from the international community. Therefore, we try to act upon the same assumption. On Transnistria, first remark is that we would be naive to expect quick changes after almost 20 years of having this big wound on our body. There are mixed signals right now, I would say. The positive signals is that not just that we as a government try to engage more the Transnistrians, the leadership, the business community, to develop the people-to-people contacts and to build the confidence, but I would also think that a very positive development is that the EU is trying to be much more active, and that the EU is trying to engage our eastern neighbors, Russia and Ukraine, in developing, hopefully, a more or less common approach to find and to strike the necessary compromises. There are still elements which we are not able really to assess properly. And one element, I have to be not very diplomatic maybe, but it's the position of Kiev. With your government, Grigori, you remember, we tried, and I think we made first very successful joint efforts in identifying the problems and also finding some remedies, not final solutions, but important steps which were pushing us or becoming conducive for a certain settlement. Right now we haven't yet received, and we don't have a clear understanding on what is Kiev's position in this respect, but of course we want to engage our partners in Kiev, and we hope very much that we'll be able to have a much stronger and better dialogue. And of course what is not very clear is Transnistria itself. They will have their elections in the so-called, for the office of the president of a self-styled republic. It shows, we see that the people there become more nervous, more emotional, more patriotic in a negative way. And of course, this development might have a negative impact. But overall, I think that there are some chances that at least we would start, hopefully in the few coming months, the official or the formal negotiations. And if they get to that situation, then hopefully we'll be able to look at the broader picture of the final status of Transnistria, but within the Republic of Moldova. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister, please.
Thank you. First point, when I said that Georgia, Azerbaijan, and Armenia are in the same boat, I meant, first of all, security, sovereignty, and independence. If we do not make up with ourselves, with each other, we might end up as in 1921, when all Georgian, Azerbaijani, Armenian foreign ministers were sitting in the same prison cell in Lubyanka. Differentiation. Yes, I believe in differentiation, absolutely. European Union shall look at Eastern Partnership as something homogeneous, but also think about judging each and every country based upon the success this country is having in democratic economic reforms, etc. Eastern Partnership with Russia. Sir, aren't you limiting my sovereignty when you're demanding from me to use Eastern Partnership or to squeeze Russia into Eastern Partnership, when Eastern Partnership is an instrument of my relationship with the European Union? Why every time Georgia is dealing with the European or Euro-Atlantic organizations, somebody is telling us that we shall take into notion interests of Russia? We're sick and tired of taking Russia into notion. We're tired. You remember when we've taken Russia into notion, in Russia's opinion, in Bucharest of 2008. And you know what was the result of that. Russia is one of the sovereign countries of the neighborhood. And let Russia take care of itself. Georgia is in the Eastern Partnership, not because Georgia is against Russia or Georgia is pro-Russian or Georgia wants to use Eastern Partnership for Russia. We are dealing with the European Union. And if Russia has problems with the Eastern Partnership, it's their own problem. And Belarus, I will make a statement about quality of democracy in Belarus when I will hear the same kind of statement about quality of democracy in Russia. If there are rules of the games, they shall be equal for everybody. And if you can explain to me what is the difference between Minsk and Moscow today, I will be tremendously grateful.
Bruce, this is the last. I think we will have to close the panel because we are running 10 minutes late. So okay, you have the right and privilege of amen.
Look, my argument this morning has basically been an argument for modesty and a certain humility as we begin this period. With regard to Grigori's request for differentiation, I would be against that because America had a brief experience with seeing into people's souls and predicting the future of men. We found out we weren't very good at it. We're not an engineer of human souls. I can't tell you if it'll be orange or blue that leads Ukraine into NATO or EU. I don't know if Ilham Aliyev or Saakashvili is the best Democrat in the South Caucasus. That will come. If we'd been predicting what was going to happen in the future, we all would have predicted the only people that would be in this room would be Yugoslavia. So we just can't see the future, and let's not pretend to. And we're not the Vatican. We don't rank people. You know, if you want that kind of decision of who's good and who's bad, call Moscow. They like to do that. So I would just say what will happen in these changes as people take equal opportunities, hopefully in the even playing field, we will be surprised. That's the only thing we can say for certain. The same kind of modesty, I think it has to my Dutch friend. We shouldn't ask of others questions we're unwilling to ask of ourselves. It is perfectly appropriate to ask about Transnistria and Abkhazia, to say what they're going to do, but then we also have to ask us, how did we fail at Srebrenica and Bosnia? How did we fail at Guantanamo? How did we fail at Abu Ghraib? I mean, if these questions are essential to our civilization, then we have to basically subject ourselves to the same questions and not basically pepper the new boy on the block with all sorts of questions that we actually haven't confronted for ourselves.
All right, that's about it. So we finished this exciting panel. I want to give you 20 minutes of break for the next one. And let me join me, please, in thanking the panelists.